The Asian Cup is 7 months away, but there is still plenty to talk about. For today's episode, part 2 of our analysis on the national team of Palestine, and we have highlights from the Hazfi Cup final. You know the deal, and you know what time it is. It's time for Team Melli Talk. Who is the rising star for the national team of Palestine? Hey everyone, welcome back to Team Melli Talk. Our analysis of Group C for the 2023 Asian Cup continues as we will finish our two-part breakdown on the national team of Palestine with Palestinian football expert Bassil Mikdadi. Hope you enjoy it. And going from one, like I said, I came up with my the Chilean contingent. I want to talk about, the Swedish Connection. I don't know why I have these. Don't ask me why I add these extra words to it. I'm just trying to be creative, right? The Swedish, the players who were brought up in Sweden. Amir Kadura, Michel Termanini, and also Samir Maruf. These players also, played for some pretty quality teams as well. And I was taking a look, at their CVs. But when talking about all these players as a whole, are there some other dual nationals that could be possibly joining the Palestinian national team, before the next Asian Cup?
Yeah. So again, I think with what I said about the Chilean contingent, the Swedish the players that were born in Sweden sort of face the same type of challenge, right? Ahmed Kadura is a very, very good goalkeeper, and he's put in really good seasons with Lance Corona Boys. That said, he's the number 2 goalkeeper, and he will remain the number 2 goalkeeper because Palestine has Rami Hamadi, who, for my money, is one of the best goalkeepers in Asia. Samir Maruf made his debut against Bahrain in the friendly we had in March. Michel Termanini debuted a couple of years ago, was sort of out of the picture, has found his feet in the Kuwaiti league, and will play a part going forward, either as one of the starting center backs or the third choice. And then there's those other players that have been in and around. I don't think he will be a part of the Asian Cup squad, but he's had a really, really good season in Thailand. Mahmoud Eid might be in that mix as well. When we talk about dual nationals, I know that the national team staff is working super, super hard to convince players to make that switch. There's more than one name in Sweden. The problem is that you sort of play a tug of war game with the Sweden national team itself, and Sweden has kind of like a B team set up because they have an odd football calendar that breaks during the winter, and they usually take that time to go to organize a warm weather friendly somewhere and pull up the best of the Allsvenskan players. And there are 2 players in particular that are eligible to play for Palestine that have been pulled up. Omar Faraj is one. He's still 20 years old, plays for AIK. He's a striker. I don't think it's going to happen. I mean, he's also been a little bit disparaging. I remember somebody sent me something that in a radio interview with a Swedish broadcaster, he said something like, "Oh, what Palestinian football? No, I don't have their number." Something like that. It was very dismissive. So I don't think he's really going to change his tune. There's another player who I think is even a little more interesting, Mustafa Zidane, who played he was part of Aston Villa's youth academy, then sort of had to work his way back in Sweden, and he had a really, really great season last season, made the move to Malmo. Perfect player that would be for us, that you could play him centrally in a creative role or as an 8, and is just like an assist and goal generating machine. He has also said, though, that he wants to sort of give it his best shot with Sweden, but he has yet to be called up to like the Sweden A team. So those are 2 players that are out there that media has been speaking about. I know for a fact that there are guys that have agreed to make the switch. It's a little bit sensitive now, so I cannot really disclose. I can't give you the scoop, but there are players that will be making there are dual nationals that will be making their national team debuts as early as next month during that June friendly window. So excited, looking forward to it, and I think what we need as a national team is we sort of have like a set group of 13, 14 players. We now need to kind of round out that squad. So we're looking for 11, 12 players to round out that 25-man squad. And I think there could be a couple of new players in the diaspora that come in to make up the numbers.
So next, I want to talk about the main rising star of the Palestinian national team. His name is Odeh Dabag, and of course, you can correct me if I mispronounce anything, obviously. So tell me about Odeh Dabag.
Yeah, amazing player. I mean, that's he just puts a smile on my face every single time I say his name. He's just a great guy too. Like just a guy that with a zest for life. Still quite young. He won't turn 25 until December, and he's played a lot of top flight football in a very young career. He burst onto the scene, I think, for people outside of Palestine at the 2018 Under-23 Asian Championships. That was the first and only time Palestine was qualified for a youth tournament in Asia, and we made it out of the groups thanks to his goals. And he really put on a show. And for my money, I think he was, especially looking back at it now, 5 years after the fact, I think he was perhaps the best player at that tournament. And he parlayed that into a spot at the Asian Cup. Should have played more, if you ask me. But he was the guy who scored the opener against Uzbekistan in that 2-0 match you mentioned. And right around that time, he moved to Kuwait. First season didn't go so well. Like, a contract was canceled with the first club he signed with. He went and signed with another club. He scored a couple of goals there. At the end of the season, they said, no, we don't want you anymore. We want to get other foreign players. They loaned him out for half this season. He kept scoring goals at that club. And then for the second half of the season, they loaned him out to their biggest rivals. And in that 6-month period, he became the top scorer of the Kuwaiti League. And he led a lot of them to their first league championship in 20 years. And it basically meant that his parent club, Tatsiya, who are big rivals of Larabi, had to sort of sit there and see him score all these goals. They also saw him score against them. They were paying his wages, and he scored against them as well in the run into that league championship. And it just shows, like, I think the professionalism he has, the maturity he has to really take on challenges. And after 2 seasons in Kuwait, he said, you know what, I'm done here. I have to find a way to get to Europe. And it's not easy for Palestinian players to get to Europe, because the way football business works, if somebody hasn't come before you to sort of lay down a marker, then it's hard to kind of convince people. You might be a national team star, you might have great statistics with a national team. If you don't have those connections with the clubs, it's not easy. But he managed to get into the Portuguese league with Arouca. His first couple of months there were rough because he didn't have a work permit, so he wasn't allowed to play until that got cleared. But he had a good first season, 4 goals and an assist in limited time. And that really saved them from the drop. They needed every single one of his goal involvements to avoid the drop. The second season, he went from strength to strength. He's got, I believe, 11 goals in all competitions, 7 in the league. He's been injured. There's been some contractual disputes because he didn't want to renew his contract with Arouca. That led him to not playing. But statistically, one of the best players in the Portuguese league, especially when you look outside of the big established 4 teams in Portugal. A little bit disappointed that Porto didn't come calling. I thought Porto would sell Mehdi Taremi and they'd bring Odeh Dabag as a replacement. That was my ideal situation for both players. I thought it would be perfect. It didn't happen. And he will be joining Charleroi in the Belgian league come next year. Which is, I think, a great move for him. Charleroi has a history of developing talent. They got Victor Osimhen for a year and then flipped him to Lille. And we all know what happened to Victor Osimhen soon thereafter. So I think moving to Charleroi is going to be a step in the right direction, because although he's in a ostensibly a better league right now, Arouca is a very defensive team and not very professionally run. So I'm really looking forward to seeing what he does next season, before the Asian Cup and then at the Asian Cup as well.
All right. Now, of course, we got to get to the main part of our agenda, and that is the 2023 Asian Cup. Yes, I know it's taking place in 2024, but let's just move past that, right?
That's
Um,
not confusing at all. No, no, no. Makes total sense.
all right. And how do you think Palestine matches up against Iran? Because you covered Iran before the 2018, 2022 World Cup. You know a lot about Team Melli, and you are an expert on the national team of Palestine. So, how do you think Palestine matches up against Iran?
Well, it's kind of tough to say now, right? Because Iran has made a coaching change, and we don't even know if Amir Ghanoi is going to be the man in charge come the Asian Cup. So I guess we can only go on the information that we sort of know or what we've seen. And right now, Palestine is more, I guess you would say, the finished product, by which I mean what we see now is what we expect we will see come January. Whereas Iran, I mean, they might go through even another iteration should another coach come on board. I would say it depends on how Iran is going to approach the match against Palestine, because Iran can do two things, right? At the World Cup, we've seen them defend in a low block quite rigidly. And then when they're in qualifying and they're the favorites, we've seen them go on the front foot and have to break teams down. Obviously, I would expect the latter more than the former when they play us, and that's going to present some challenges. I don't think if it's Amir Ghanoi, if it's somebody else, I don't think they're going to come in and say let's sit in the low block and try and play counter-attacking football. I think the matchup is very interesting. You're talking about two teams that I think are very similar, and by that I mean the prototypical Palestinian and the prototypical Iranian player are they're kind of a mirror image of each other. We are not neither ourselves nor Iran our players are not of slight build. So by Asian standards, big guys, tall, 180 centimeters plus on average, but also very technical. And that's not to say that like the quality in the Iranian national team is the same as the quality in the Palestinian national team. Iran obviously has a lot more depth and a lot more history. It's just to say what the profiles of both teams are. So I think Palestine can nullify some of the things Iran does when they play against weaker Asian teams. And I know that because we do it ourselves, right? If we play against a team from East Asia, not to kind of play into stereotypes, but sometimes to break him down, you say, okay, let's try and target the fullback with one of our taller wingers, right? Like, Iran might do something like to have Mehdi drift out wide and play a long diagonal to him. And if he's, pinned a fullback that's a head shorter than him, he can use his speed and he can use his physicality to create an advantage and to get a goal that is not through the pattern of play, but through just seeing an opportunity. And Palestine does the same thing as well with forwards like Tamer Siam and with Hadid Dabag that we've mentioned. So that part, neither side's going to be able to do that against each other. Now we, as Palestine, and you guys as Iran, we might be able to do that against Hong Kong and UAE in the group. That's going to come into play. But for this particular game, that won't be a factor. I think when assessing this game, we have to be quite frank with ourselves. No matter how optimistic we are, Iran is Iran, and Iran does not lose games at the Asian Cup group stage. I looked into it. The last time that happened was in 1996 against Iraq. You look at these last three editions of the Asian Cup, 2011, 2015, 2019. It's 8 consecutive clean sheets. It's 8 out of 9 wins. The only team that broke that perfect record was Iraq in 2011, scored a goal in a 2-1 loss. And Iraq again, in that game, which was a dead rubber in the UAE, it finished 0-0. So to get a point against Iran would be huge, but I would expect that Iran will find a way to win. Don't think it'll be easy. I think Palestine will give it its best go. And I do like the fact that we're playing Iran first, because that's when you can maybe catch one of the favorites asleep. Nerves on both sides, something goes wrong, they're not quite into tournament mode, they're still thinking about club football. it's an opportunity for us to maybe spring a surprise, but I would expect Iran to win this game because that's what Iran does at an Asian Cup. They win their games at the group stage.
Well, you've given a very good explanation. I'm obviously very impressed. I'm not surprised though, to let you know. But I will also tell you that, the team you mentioned, let's just say you know how to just make me, cringe. When I hear Iraq and Iran at the Asian Cup, yeah, I've had some memories. I've had some good ones. I've also had some where I really wanted to break something. I'm sure you know which one I'm talking about when I say I wanted to break something, but it actually involved more wanting to break. That actually, the one I'm talking about more so is talking about wanting to get up, is getting back at a referee who just was a complete moron. But, I'm just going to move past that. I don't want to spend too much time on that. We all just,
I mean, that's Asian football. We all have our favorite Asian referees, right?
yeah.
And they always seem to find us again and again.
Yeah, and of course, and also for any of this, and for any of some of the trolls who've liked to have trolled the Team Melli Talk YouTube page, well, I've always said it before, and I'll say it again, and I will continue to say it. We all know that 2015 quarterfinal, that was Iran's game to win. The referees definitely helped Iraq out a lot, that's for sure. But like you were saying though, talking about the group stage, and in a previous edition of Team Melli Talk, of course, I recommend you watch it. But I mean, I'm also just going to just tell you what I mentioned when I was talking to one of my buddies about the group when the draw was just announced, was that I actually, out of all the three teams in this group for Iran, UAE, Palestine, and Hong Kong, I chose Palestine as being the team to give Iran the most possible problems because, Iran is very familiar with the United Arab Emirates, and they've also played Hong Kong in a recent qualifying campaign as well too. I just view Palestine as this type of national team that's a little bit more mysterious, and they can surprise you. I mean that's my personal assessment of the national team of Palestine.
Yeah, I would agree. I think if you look at just I do not recommend someone to look at the historical record to try and extrapolate a possible result because teams change quite quickly. And even the last time the two teams met in the lead up to the 2019 Asian Cup, they played a friendly in Qatar, and it finished as in a 1-1 draw. I would not extrapolate anything from that result. I thought that meant that we were going to have a great Asian Cup. We did not have a great Asian Cup after that meaningless friendly result. But if you do look at it, I mean, it's three draws and 3 losses for Palestine. So Palestine does have the ability to eke out a result, and I think that's what we'll try and go for. If we can get a point, then that means we're kind of playing with house money going into the game against UAE. That said, I do think if Iran plays up to their ability, they should be able to find the result. It won't be easy, but I think they'll be able to find the result. If Palestine are to spring an upset, it means the goalkeeper, Mikdadi, who I think is one of the best in Asia, definitely up there with Beranvand, and I don't know who else we put in the conversation. He would need to stand on his head. The Bag would need to do something special. And Iran would need to have an off day. I don't think it's in the realm of impossibility, but if I were to kind of handicap it, I'd say, yeah, probably 70% chance Iran wins and maybe 15% chance each of a draw or a loss for Palestine.
But, when looking at the other team, we're getting close to wrapping this up. I really appreciate you being here and taking the time. But when looking at the other teams in Group C, how do you like Palestine's chances of advancing to the knockout phase?
Well, I'll be honest with you. I'm a lot happier with this group than I was in 2015 or 2019. Those groups were murder. I mean, we were handed a group last time around that looked like, a group that you would get at a 16-team Asian Cup or even at a 12-team Asian Cup. It was super tough. And I think you couldn't have handpicked a better draw when it comes to opponents from pot 4 and pot 2. And I know for a fact, and I think the assistant coach came out and said it, we wanted Hong Kong from pot 4. I think, I respect all opponents and anybody who we face. You have to respect what they're there to do. They're fighting for their national team. They're fighting for their fans, and obviously they're going to give it their all to win. But I do think Hong Kong is the weakest team in pot 4 and the one that is a little bit surprising. I don't even think the most ardent Hong Kong fan would have said they would be at this Asian Cup. And UAE is just a team that I feel is at the end of a generation. They're really scraping the barrel. They have to renew the team, and the solution for them is just to change the coach. And as far as I've heard, Rodolfo Arbarena is going to be gone come June because his contract is expiring, and they're going to bring a new guy in. And they don't. I mean, the one guy I really respect in their team is Ali Mabhout, because he just scores goals and you have to respect that. But they were trying to phase him out of the team, and they've naturalized 2 Brazilians and an Argentine, and it just seems like a big mess over there. And I've seen what Qatar did at the Asian Cup and at the Arab Cup against them, and I think it's something that we can replicate, which is let them try and play whatever their coach wants them to do in possession and like the pattern of play. Let them do that. We will catch them in and around the middle of the pitch, the midfield area, and then we will go direct, and we will kill them with our speed, we will kill them with our physicality, and they will win the possession game, we will win the scoreboard game. And I think we can replicate that model. I really do. I think they would struggle with our players. And the last time we played them was a while back, and they were still quite a strong Asian team, and we were still a team that was trying to find our way. I think now, if you look at it, I think an Emirati fan, if he's really honest with himself, will look at the Palestinian team and say, you know what? I wish Ahmed Hamadi was my goalkeeper. I wish Adi Bag was on my team. I wish even the forwards that we have, Mahmoud Wadi, who plays in Egypt, Salah Shahadi, who plays in Switzerland, the Qunbur brothers, who have both moved to Jordan recently. These are all guys who I think can play for the UAE. Mus'ab al-Battat. I can keep going on. I mean, the list of guys who I think can play for the UAE national team is quite long. If I compare that list with the guys who I think can play for the Iranian national team, yeah, maybe Adi Bag, right, as a starter. He could get the other players, maybe Rami Hamadi if Berandan is not in form. Otherwise, it's very tough for me to make an honest argument of another player who could step in and be a starter on the Iranian national team. I think there are other players we have that could get into the Iran squad, but it's not like the UAE. I mean, I go up and down and up the UAE squad, and there's not a single player that I'm like, wow, I really wish that guy played for Palestine, because honestly, they haven't shown that, and they're bringing new guys in who are just guys in their local leagues. So it's nothing special. I mean, I don't want to disrespect anyone, but I think Emirati fans are quite disappointed with their state of football, and I don't think the solution is to get rid of Abu Gharaida and put in a new coach. They've done this before. They've done it like 5 or 6 times in the last cycle. It seems like they are capable of beating Hong Kong, but I don't see them doing anything at this Asian Cup.
Very good explanation once again, and I've actually been very, I've totally been on the same page with you too about the UAE's national team. I mean, you talk about them naturalizing a couple of Brazilian footballers and also one Argentinian player, Sebastian Tagliabue. I believe he started playing for them in his mid-30s, and when I saw that, I just said, okay, that doesn't make much sense. That doesn't make much sense. There's got to be some younger options at the same position, like you would say, in their football pipeline for sure. And when you talked about, Iran possibly having a new coach, well, I'll just go ahead and say anything is possible with the Iranian Football Federation. But from here at this point, I really would not expect Amir Galanoui to not be the coach at the Asian Cup. I mean, of course, I'd be perfectly fine with it because I'm not a big fan of him. I know there are some followers of mine that still support him, but I remember the 2007 Asian Cup perfectly. So I'll just be very quick to say that, I'm not sure how much you remember from that tournament, but he made a lot of mistakes with Iran, placing players in the wrong positions. I mean, one of his midfielders, Freydun Zandi, he had him playing as a left back. And I remember that game against China. China was attacking that exact side. And it was, those were adjustments that needed to be made. So I'm just going to say straight up that as long as Amir Galanoui puts the Team Melli footballers in the right positions, I think they're going to be fine. But I think if he decides to grow a brain, it could really create some problems against any opponent.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, you mentioned that game against China. It's a little bit hazy. It's been a while, but yeah, look, I think history has been a little bit kind to Amir Galanoui. Like look, at the end of the day, he went out of that Asian Cup on penalties, right? So he didn't lose a game in regular time. It might have not been pretty, but he didn't lose a game in regular time. And when they made the decision to switch, and they went to Ali Dai, I believe, after that, qualifying did not go as expected, and there were a lot of results that I believe losing to Saudi Arabia at home and things that never happened in Iranian football history before happened. So history has been kind to him. And I also think he carved out a really nice career for himself in the Iranian league, both with established powers and also taking teams like Sepahan, Zobahan, and winning the league with them, or being just there as runner-up or winning the cup. with a lot of teams that aren't, the established powers in Iranian football. So I think he's earned a chance. Like if you were to kind of go up and down the managerial list of local managers you can get, I think he's earned that chance. I know a lot of people wanted Nikonam, who's still quite early in his managerial career. I think he's earned the shot, right? Now, obviously, if he does creative things like playing Zandi at left back or whatever the equivalent would be nowadays, then yeah, things could go haywire. But I also think we have to acknowledge the fact that I think the level of Iranian football is a lot better now than it was in 2007, right? He's going to have a lot more weapons at his disposal. In 2007, even Zandi, for example, I think he came into that tournament not really playing regular football, or he was playing in the Cypriot League or something like that, and he was held in high regard by Iranian fans. So you never know, you never know. And I also think it's quite interesting how some really fancied managers don't find success at national team levels, and the unfancied ones really do. An example from Palestine, like Mekram Dabu was part of the staff. He was in the background. He was the goalkeeper coach for 10 years with the national team. And when he got given the role initially on an interim basis, a lot of people said, well, great, they're just bringing in another like assistant of an assistant. This guy's not going to do anything. But he shocked everyone in playing like a really proactive brand of football and really doing things that we haven't seen before. And we haven't seen Palestine play with a lot of bravery with this in a very, very long time. It was definitely a breath of fresh air compared to his predecessor. But even if you look at the statistics of Mekram Dabu in isolation, it's like he's literally the best manager we've ever had over the first 12 games of his tenure. You never know, right? And I also, what I always say to my friends about when you appoint a national team coach, do not underestimate the ability to speak in the local language and connect with the players on that really visceral level. Because you don't have a lot of time as a national team coach, especially the more your players play abroad, the less time you're going to have with them. So you have to find a way to connect. And in our case, Mekram Dabu speaks Arabic, has been in Palestine for 10 years. He can connect with the players. And I know Karush Kerush, he really embedded himself in the culture, but he's not coming back. And I think the cycle has ended. So if you bring in a foreign coach, you could make an expensive mistake. And Iran has lived that before, right? They bought in Vilmaz, and that was a disaster. And I can tell you one thing: I don't know if the Galanoy experiment will work or if it will fail. But I will tell you one thing: he will be better than Mark Vilmaz, because Mark Vilmaz was an absolute unmitigated disaster. So the worst thing that can happen is it doesn't quite work out, but then the levels of the level of failure will not be at that level, and it won't be as expensive as that mistake as well.
Bassil, I would just like to thank you for taking the time to join us on Team Melli Talk. It was really a pleasure to have you on the show. Great to hear about your knowledge of the national team of Iran, and of course, great to be educated so much on the national team of Palestine. It really was a pleasure to have you on the show.
Listen, likewise, and I'm looking forward to analyzing the group again once the date draws closer, and hopefully we can meet up in Qatar come January.
Absolutely. I don't have anything set in stone at this moment. I did go to all three of Iran's matches at the 2022 World Cup in Qatar, but I think I still have it in the works to possibly make another trip to Qatar. That's for sure. And once again, it was great.
My team wasn't at the World Cup, so this is literally my World Cup experience 1 year removed from the fact.
Absolutely. And once again, I appreciate you taking the time. And once again, please just share with our viewers, how they can find you on Twitter and how they can find your webpage as well.
Sure. So Twitter account is @FootballPalestine. Football was too long, so we spelled it the Spanish way. So it's FUTBOL Palestine. You can also follow me at Twitter. It's just my first name and last name, Bassil Mikdadi. Our website is footballpalestine.com. And for those of you who want to get into the nitty-gritty details of Palestinian football, there's also subscription options that we just launched with exclusive video content, podcasts, the like. So please do check it out. If you ever have a question, happy to engage with Iranian fans the world over, just tweet at me and we can have a conversation.
And that concludes the analysis on the national team of Palestine. Once again, a special thank you to Bassil Mikdadi for taking the time. Really do appreciate it.
It couldn't have been a better Hazfi Cup final match. Perspolis vs Esteghlal at the Azadi Stadium in Tehran. Mehdi Torabi gives Perspolis the lead in the 29th minute. What a shot from Torabi using the outside of his right foot. Nothing Hosseini can do to stop this one. Perspolis with a 1-0 lead. Deep into stoppage time in the second half, a free kick for Esteghlal and a header from Hossein Moradband. We are tied 1-1. Unbelievable. Moradband's header bounces off the post. This means we would be headed to extra time. Late in extra time, a free kick from Omid Ali Shah finds its way to the back of the net. Hossein Hosseini could not believe it. A 2-1 lead for Perspolis, and that's the way it would end. Perspolis completes the double. What a season. And that's it, everybody, for this edition of Team Melli Talk. As always, really do appreciate the support. Make sure you get to our website, www.teammelitalk.com. Remember, this is your best source for the latest news on Team Melli, the national team of Iran. Make sure you find us on social media, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. You know the handle, at Team Melli Talk. Don't forget to like, comment, share, subscribe. Hit that notification button. See you on the next edition of Team Melli Talk.